Morning, everybody. Last left you at my part of the story with the kid, and so it was just a wonderful year of getting to work with somebody who has since become my friend and meant so much and done so much for me. At the spring of that year, after doing some field training of well, the best recruit that I ever had, um, the fly. And people who know me and know him will know who I'm talking about. I'll just touch on a little bit what it's like to field train at the beginning, and then there'll be some more stuff about field training sort of towards the end of this. Um, it is such an important job. Um, there's not a lot from the organization, from the service, that motivates people to do it. But, for those of us out there on the street who are senior, if we want to see more good cops, not clones of ourselves, but more good, active, proactive street cops, then it's up to us to take that responsibility. And, there's not a lot of incentive to do it. Um, well, there is and there isn't. It's working for two. It's stress for two. It's eyes and ears for two. But if we really care about putting other good cops out there, as I say, uh, then we do it. When you get a good one, it makes the job so much easier. And the fly was the best recruit I ever had. It started a little bit later in life than many cops do. I had some good life experience and just had a really calm um, and fearless um, mentality. He was really at a stage when I got field training him where he just, he knew how to talk to people. Uh, he was pretty confident in what he wanted to say when it came to documenting calls and encounters and such. But he had the wisdom and fortitude to always check in and make sure that what he was saying was the right thing, or good. Sorry, just adjusting a little bit there. And years later now, it turned out that he's worked in a couple plainclothes unit, and he was he is very much an investigatively minded, I hope that's a word, cop. And so, me being more of a proactive street cop, I was still able to help him and guide him on the street and within the politics of the organization. That's also part of the field trainer's responsibility, not just teaching him basic street cop skills, but it just goes to show that a street cop can, if you've been around long enough and know what the right thing to do is, that you can help develop someone who's investigatively minded. I'm proud to say that, he just recently got promoted, and we'll be going to another plainclothes investigative unit soon from uniform, and he's worked in others, and he's someone who has earned what he's gotten. Gooder English there, and I'm quite proud of him. So I had a blast working with him, and it was way less stressful working with him because he was just, he had a lot of career maturity, and a lot more maturity compared to his field trainer, both now and back then. And so as transfer time was approaching that year, 08, 09, on one evening, which turned into night shift, which turned into a little bit of day shift, I was on some OT from, I want to say another traffic stop, probably, knowing my history. That turned into a whole whack of charges and seasoned some shit. So I got home and I'd been asleep for maybe an hour and a half, when a staff sergeant called my wife, and my wife came into the room to wake me up, which she doesn't or has rarely ever done, because she knows better, and she knows that I'm a bit of a baby back bitch if I don't get a good night's rest. And as we get older, sorry, I keep adjusting my computer. As we get older, night shift becomes increasingly difficult to do. Um, but anyway, so I get this phone call, and it was a super last minute thing. And to touch on the political aspect of things, this now staff sergeant, or a staff sergeant at the time, was an old patrol sergeant, an S2 of mine, and I'd always enjoyed working for him. He'd always treated me well, and so that's something that I keep in mind, because if good people who treat you well, who manage you well, supervise you well, if they're phoning, with a last minute favor, back then my mindset was, you don't say no to that. Um, and I think there's a lot of merit to that way of thinking, because when you help somebody else out, they're more inclined to help you out later on down the road. And you want to keep good relationships with people who have the capacity to make your career more fun or more miserable, so long as the favor is reasonable, and the person is a good person, and that person certainly was. But they were meeting. He told me they were meeting like an hour and a half later after he phoned me and offered me a spot in a joint unit with the RCMP, and I mean, I was tired. I wasn't thinking super clearly, but he made me an offer, and he needed to know right away because they had to decide for HR reasons who was going to fill that spot, and well, I said yes. So it was an area like financial investigations of criminal organizations, something that I knew very little about, and it involved a lot of reading and writing, search warrants, and sort of specific case law. And although it was an aspect of organized crime investigations that I was a little bit familiar with, the amount of reading and writing specific to that kind of thing is very, very different than a drug investigation. And it was a Monday to Friday days only job, and I didn't give that a lot of or any consideration. I just felt that I was compelled to say yes. And looking back now, I could have said no, and that would have been fine. But I didn't know better then. And so I said yes, and then I went and informed the brass and the division, because I was still in the North End, the division that I was working out of, and let them know. And as it turned out, they had a position in mind for me there that wasn't in general patrol in uniform. And it was a regret. I should have taken that because it would have been a really fun job, and I would have been productive and really enjoyed it. But what the hell? So I moved on and worked out of the RCMP building on Portage Avenue, and it's very different. I think any municipal or civic police service or provincial police service, when you compare them to federal policing, it's very, very different. We're like kids that are raised by different parents, if that describes it accurately. Federal policing, is in a lot of remote, rural communities, and there's just so many different things about it. Whether you're working on a file all by yourself from start to finish, and there's no plainclothes investigative follow-up, or processing a prisoner by yourself, or working in a cruiser car alone by yourself. So it changes the nature of how you police drastically. And there's much more of in my opinion, there's much more of a military and police aspect to it, because when you get hired by the RCMP, you get sent off to their depot in Regina for I think 6 months. You're away from home, and that's where you live and that's where you train. There's much more marching and drill, and that's much more an active part, at least at the very beginning of your career. And so it makes for a different type of cop. Uh, Another comparison that one of the RCMP officers that I work with made is that Winnipeg police are more like a shotgun, whereas the RCMP are like a highly tuned sniper rifle. And well, when I heard that, I chuckled, and you have to be able to laugh and joke about that shit, interagency wise, and yeah. So bottom line, we're different, and there were a lot of good guys, a lot of guys there that I liked. It was myself and another senior WPS officer that I didn't know at all, and I was a very different type of cop than him. But there were the RCMP supervisors there were very good to me, and one of them was a lot like one of the old vice bosses that I had, and so they treated me very well. But it didn't take long for me to realize that working inside an office was not for me. The pace of working Monday to Friday days was not for me. But I didn't complain about that at work, and I did my best to learn what that job was like. And I got the opportunity to take some courses specific to that kind of work. So that's all. More education and training is always important, because you never know how you're going to use that later on in your career, but it's always of benefit. Even if it's a subject matter that you're not super into or what have you. And one positive thing about me being there was that I did bring a lot of contact from other WPS specialty units that knew of my background and work, and so that was good. But we weren't really able to do a lot of proactive stuff because there was still a large leftover part of an investigative file that they had already been working on, that the WPS had brought to them. And so I found that a bit frustrating, that you couldn't really get out there and investigate a file, whether you received it from a federal source or from someone in the WPS. But that's just the way it was. Yeah, so the other thing that's really important to talk about was that it was a schedule that was not conducive to my home life. My wife, who runs a dance studio, did at that time and still does now, works Monday through Thursday evenings and during the day on Saturdays and Sundays for 6 to 7 hours each of those days. That's the schedule that she maintained at the time. And so with me working just Monday to Friday during the day, we hardly saw each other, and that's no good. That's not good at all. But you do make sacrifice. I did make that sacrifice because I thought it would be in my best interest later on down the road. I don't know that it ever made a difference, but that was my thinking when I accepted that offer. And yeah, so I knew that after being there for a little over, almost a year, I knew that I didn't want to stay there any longer. Not because of anything that happened or because how I was treated by anybody. Again, I was treated very well, and but I knew that I would be seeking to leave because I just wasn't enjoying myself and as much as I wanted to, and it wasn't good for me at home. So come that spring, I wound up asking for a mandatory transfer, and then I was able to do that, and I got into District 6, which was the old Pembina station before the Districts 2 and District 6 combined into West Division, which it is now. And the station was still on Pembina. And I wound up working for a hunting buddy of mine. And it was good because it was working for somebody that I knew, which is important, and being a senior guy on the shift, so I did a lot of acting out there. Um, I have to say, for the most parts, uh, that it was not a shift that I was a uniform shift that I was accustomed to. The very different bunch of coppers on that shift. And I remember the first day that I was there, a few of them were talking about what were some of the most obscure traffic tags that they handed out, and I, that's that's what they were interested in. And I just thought, oh fuck, here we go. This is going to be a long period of time, because that's just not me. Um, but suck it up and take working in the new area in the suburbs, which is not as much fun or the same as working in North Division or downtown. And so I did that. So when I wasn't supervising, um, I had been assigned to field trained a person who had already graduated but was put on extended field training because they were having performance issues. And that is something that is just, well, I found it extremely frustrating because, I was given the task of monitoring and logging this person's performance, even though I wasn't their supervisor, um, and documenting it and bringing it to the boss, who was and is my friend, a friend of mine. And it's so extremely frustrating when you note and document legitimate performance issues, especially when there are officer safety related ones. And I noted multiple ones that were very, very concerning. And of course, I brought them forward to my supervisor, who heard me out. I'm going to go into detail about those in the next episode because it takes a lot of time, and they have to be really specifically described because they're important things to talk about, because they're good examples of what not to do and how to correct them, and how to, as a senior guy, go over or debrief events, whether they be big or small, critical or not, because when someone's got some serious fucking issues in terms of how they're performing, especially officer safety, that shit has to get fucking remedied, because it could be it could mean the matter of life or death or serious harm. And you cannot allow, as a senior guy, it is your job to ensure that those bad habits aren't perpetuated by that person, or that they do not put that person in danger, or more importantly, any future partners of that person in danger. And I'll again, like I said, I'll get more into it in the next episode, because I need a lot of time to cover that, which is unfortunate. But one little bit of it is just the person's observational skills and what they were paying attention to, not just up here, but also through their eyes, where their focus is, knowing what their responsibilities are when they're the one in the jumper seat, in the passenger seat, and there's just critical things that I went into with an open mind. Okay, I'm going to teach this person, not just condemn their bad behavior. I'm going to try to fix them. That was my job. Not just document shitty fucking work, but to try to fix them. And it's painstaking, but it's necessary. and I wasn't glad to do it, but it was good that I was the one to do it. And yeah, so I'll let you know how that all turned out in the next episode, and hopefully, people that watch this, um, they appreciate how crucial field training is, especially when you've got some real issues to work through. And as always, if you have any thoughts or concerns, questions or topics you want me to discuss or touch on, um, and for this episode and the next specifically on the topic of field training and performance review, please let me know. Shoot me a message. And in the meantime, we'll see you again soon. Take good care of yourselves, and take good care of each other. Love you.